not just Trump. All of them want more because they want more war. They want more bloodshed of ordinary people. They want more money in their pockets through the war profiteering. And all of this is a dangerous and ominous march towards World War III. So the need to unite the working class internationally on uh, an unflinchingly and unambiguously working class agenda against the capitalist class of every nation, that has never been more urgent.
And this is another reason why I find the people saying, "Oh, I'm sorry that I told the working class to support Trump. I thought Trump was anti-war." That never made any sense because Donald Trump's biggest criticism of NATO was not their endless aggression against victims of imperialism. His criticism of NATO was they wasn't spending more on the military budgets. Trump was upset because Europe wasn't implementing austerity enough on their people in order to fund the NATO war machine. So Trump went, and he was happily welcomed by neocons in NATO like Mark Rutte, who called him daddy, but because they always wanted to fund the military-industrial complex more and justify that. Now they had Trump calling for a 5% military budget, and they have the giant NATO summit. This is why I want to quickly ask you about before we wrap here. You have all the NATO allies that way is 100% happy with this, despite NATO countries. And you have Mark Rutte that said that European countries may have to cut social spending, may have to cut healthcare, pensions, in order to fund the insane neocon programs to promote never-ending war against against Russia. So I want to get your thoughts on the never-ending expansion of NATO. Like, this is the video. I don't know. I'm trying to get it to load here. But you even have Mark Rutte that called Trump daddy. That's how much they quickly finding to love Trump, because Trump is continuing the Ukraine war. He was never serious about ending that. I want to get your thoughts. Any thoughts on the continuing obsession with Europe to wage war against Russia, and the fact that they are implementing austerity and hurting the working class in Europe in order to fund it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, as you correctly said and reminded people that Trump is a con man. You should not think that he is pro-worker or anti-war. He is very much part of the capitalist class personally. I mean, he's a billionaire personally, and he advocates for billionaire interests. He is among the war profiteers, and he advocates for war profiteers. We have to be very clear, and that's why, as you correctly reminded everyone, that he was not against NATO because of the horrific loss of life through war that has been happening in country after country through US and NATO led militaries, but because NATO is not spending enough, and that the United States state was footing too much of the bill. So that's completely different from a working class agenda. And it's true that because of his mercurial and unpredictable character, he's not the preferred representative for the US capitalist class, but they are very much in agreement with him on all the actual policies that he is willing to put forward. We know all the horrendous budget cuts, the cuts to Medicare and Medicaid that he wants to carry out, which are going to be just horrific, especially to Black and other communities of color, working people and poor people who are going to be impacted by that. And the genocide machine, all of this, they are very much for it. All these corporations, war corporations like Palantir and Lockheed Martin, they donate to my opponent Adam Smith. They also donate to Donald Trump. They benefit from both parties because war and endless misery for working people is a bipartisan agenda. And it actually shows you this latest thing from NATO. It shows you why I was saying in the earlier question, why it is important for us to have international working class solidarity, because this 5% increase in so-called defense expenditure, which is really military expenditure to kill Ukrainian and Russian ordinary people on the battlefield, is going to come at the expense not only of those lives, but it's going to come at the expense of working people and poor people in those European countries. So we can't forget that. And we also have to keep in mind that all of this push to ramp up military spending is because the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the war in Ukraine, is part of the overarching conflict between the US led bloc of countries and the China and Russia led bloc of countries. And both the Democrats and Republicans want a massive increase in military spending by all the NATO countries, and not just Trump. All of them want more because they want more war. They want more bloodshed of ordinary people. They want more money in their pockets through the war profiteering. And all of this is a dangerous and ominous march towards World War III. So the need to unite the working class internationally on uh, an unflinchingly and unambiguously working class agenda against the capitalist class of every nation, that has never been more urgent.
Yeah, see, like the only thing that Zoran has going for him is lucky he's just a New York mayor. If he was like running for Congress, I would be way more critical. You know what I mean? Because luckily, he don't control foreign policy. Because one of the reasons why I would never, ever, ever align myself with the progressive left ever again is because they're supporting the NATO proxy war. That let alone everything else they did, that alone is a red flag. Because do you guys understand that they use this war to destroy the working class in Europe? The fact that AOC supports this, the fact that DSA endorsed people who supports this, Jamal Bowman was defending this war, even though he didn't know what the Donbass was. It was a massive betrayal of the global working class. You see this, Kshama? NATO calls on nations to divert social security money to defense. And during Bernie Sanders' private jet-funded war against the oligarchy tour, did he ever mention this? When have Bernie Sanders ever critiqued NATO for cutting social spending in European countries? Did Zoran ever mention this? Once again, I will give him a pass because he's a mayor. Guys, I will go way harder on him. Luckily, he only decided to be a mayor because he don't control foreign policy. So it's like whatever to me. But the progressive left, the congressional left that support NATO, we should never align with these fascists who align themselves with the Ukrainian state who cracked down on collective bargaining and workers' bargaining rights. Did Bernie ever critique the Zelensky regime for that? Nope. Kshama, any final thoughts? Because I think this is one of the reasons why the left should not only be passively opposed to the NATO proxy war, but why we should be speaking up aggressively against it. I can show you guys more receipts because I report on this consistently, where they said climate change initiative programs are going to be cut. I just saw an article saying that healthcare programs. Here it is. This is what I just saw. Look, for the Bernie Sanders type who claim to care about climate, AOC claims to care about climate, Kshama. Europe's pledge to spend more on military will hurt climate and social programs. Meanwhile, every single Green Party in Europe supports the NATO proxy war. Every single one of them. Kshama, I give you final thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, all these wars are wars for the interests of capitalism. You know, as the old adage, but very, very apt saying in the labor movement goes, no war but class war. That should be the cornerstone for the working class internationally, that every war started by the capitalist class is a war in its own favor, in its greed. And every such war is going to exact a bloody and unimaginable toll from the working class internationally. And so we cannot have, again, we have to be very clear. And there's another line in the sand to draw. If you're drawing a line in the sand between the capitalist class and the working class's needs, then that also has to include the imperialist warmongering project, because no war, whether it is in Ukraine or in elsewhere, is in favor of the working class. And the only solution to all of this is for us to be unshakable in insisting that we need international unity on a working class basis. And that's why, for example, in our campaign for US Congress, obviously we are saying we need to end the genocide. We are campaigning to end all US military funding for the Israeli state, but we are also campaigning for an end to all military funding for the Ukraine war also, because both are wars for the capitalist class, and what the working class can have no part in it.
Look at this, guys. This is people are not angry enough at the neocon class. BlackRock bets big on defense companies amid escalating geopolitical tensions. Palantir, Lockheed Martin, Northrop among stocks in focus. So you have a BlackRock chancellor in Germany. People think Europe's a democracy. They have bankers running their society. And the guy who's the chancellor of Germany is literally a former executive of BlackRock. And what is he doing? He's advocating for never-ending war. Because the people who fund the ruling class is poised to make a fortune over these wars. And people wonder why Trump is not ending the genocide in Gaza. Why would he end the genocide in Gaza when one of his biggest donors is Palantir? When Palantir makes profit off the genocide in Gaza. People have no idea how evil the capitalist class is. You cannot end war. You cannot end imperialism without ending capitalism, because they have a profit motive to continue it. Kshama?
Yeah, exactly. No, just to agree with you, it's a very important quote from an article in the Asian Times. It's an op-ed in which the author writes that Alexander Karp, the CEO of Palantir, he is building the operating system for perpetual war, and he is winning. That's what he says. And I think that's absolutely accurate. He is, again, just to quote more from the article, he's drawing the blueprint for a new kind of techno-authoritarianism where AI doesn't just observe the battlefield, it becomes the battlefield. And so all of these, in fact, and it's not a new thing. Many of the people may be hearing Palantir for the first time in the last weeks or months, but it is not a new corporation. This corporation has been profiting from war for at least 2 decades, and they've been funding Democrats and Republicans for 2 decades. In fact, Palantir's Alexander Karp, he has already, donated the maximum amount to Adam Smith, my opponent, for next year's campaign. I mean, the election hasn't even begun.
Kshama versus Palantir.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's exactly what it's going to be. This is going to be pitch battle between obviously Adam Smith and the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It's also going to be a war between the working class and the war profiteers. And in fact, it's telling that, one of the things about Adam Smith is not only did he call the anti-genocide protesters left-wing fascists, he called for anti-war protesters to be arrested. He said they should be arrested. He's Mr. Nice Guy here. And he has benefited from enormous amounts of funding from war profiteers. And they are going to, as I said, that all these entities are going to go to war against the working class. And the only way for us to win is for us meaning the working class as a whole, to refuse to accept that and match the ferocious opposition that we are going to get. And we should not underestimate that in any way whatsoever, but match that ferocious opposition from the capitalist class by building a mass movement to win this election, which means, as I said, thousands upon thousands of people getting involved in this campaign, and also thousands upon thousands of people donating to this campaign as well. We're not going to take money from some Thiel fellow or some budding billionaire just because he's in his 20s. Absolutely not. We have a strong track record. I was on the city council for 10 years. I won 4 elections. Every second election, every subsequent election was a more pitch battle between us and the ruling class. And that's another rule of thumb. If you don't see that happening progressively with every election, then you're selling out. Because if you're not selling out, and if you are being effective and winning victories for working people like we have done, then the capitalist class and the two parties of the system, they are going to recognize you as enemy number one, and they will come after you with everything they've got. And the only way you can withstand them is by working class movements, and that is how we have won every campaign, and that's what we're going to need again. So I'm really urging everybody who is watching this, if you agree with what we've been talking about, Nick and I have been talking about, then please go to kshamasawant.org. That's my first name and last name, all one word, kshamasawant.org, and make a donation. We have already raised over $100,000 within 3 weeks. We have more than 700 donors from 42 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. And in case you live in Delaware, Idaho, Iowa, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, West Virginia, or Wyoming, then you will have the honor of being our first donor, because those are the only states from which we don't have working class donations. So help us build this campaign, help us build a real fighting power against not only Adam Smith, but all these war purveyors, including Palantir, all these exploitative corporations like Amazon, so that we can really set the trend towards what working class can do on a national level. We've already done that in Seattle, but we need these politics in the national on the national stage. We need to take the fight nationally to win free healthcare, and also to take the fight to end capitalism as well.
Yeah, you guys know I fuck with Kshama Sawant. I am a revolutionary who believes that we need to build socialist third parties. That's I believe in the Marxist train of thought of building Marxist strong working class solidarity parties, and not trying to infiltrate, be captured by the system. So anyone who is anti-imperialist, anyone who stands for the working class, and anyone who's building a explicit anti duopoly socialist third party, I will be a fool not to support that. That's why I've been at the Working Strike Back. I was upset I didn't make the last one because I was moving, I had a lot of stuff going on, but I'll definitely be at the next one. But I am a supporter, and everyone has different theories of change. I'm not like an anarchist. I believe we need to build third-party socialist movements, build our own governments. We need to build mutual aid societies, separate ourselves from the system, and build our own government and make ourselves independent from the capitalist class. And as we have our own outside government upheld by mutual aid societies, we have someone on the ballot, make the capitalist class nervous. And as they get nervous, they just start threatening us. And as they start threatening us, we build our militias. Because what does government have? The government have a militia. This is how you build revolutions, but it starts at the third party level. You need to build. So when people say, I don't believe in third parties, what do you mean? Like, show me the historical precedent of a revolutionary sparking out of nowhere without an organized party. It doesn't happen. That's why I don't understand the anarchist argument for this, but I am unapologetically supportive of people who run socialist third party, period. Especially because it gives us the skeleton that we need to build a mutual aid societies or outside governments. And me and Rome, we talk about this all the time. Once we have this done, we build a militia to protect our own. Not advocating for violence, but we have a militia to protect our own. There's not going to be no police violence, that's what I would say. But that's a conversation for another day. You guys know I like to talk about revolutionary theory. But I know you have, we can end it here, Kshama. I appreciate your time. You're always welcome on RBN. Anything else you want to add? Any thoughts you have as we exit out here?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It is always a tremendous pleasure having a conversation with you, Nick, and I'm happy to be back anytime. And yes, we missed you the last time, and we absolutely would want you to come back to the next big event of Workers Strike Back. And in fact, our campaign is having a big rally on Saturday, September 13th in Seattle. We definitely want you there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah,
I was moving. I had a big move. You guys see the new place. I had a big move, a lot of stuff going on. So I was very upset that I couldn't make it. But you guys know I'm always down to give a speech, meet the people, and being around you guys. So I'm down. You said September, you said?
Yeah, Saturday, September 13th. I'll message you it as well, so you'll have it. It's fine if you can't remember the date, but I'll send it to you. Yeah. But Saturday, September 13th. Yeah, so please go ahead and book your flight. We definitely want you there. And also, just a few things in closing. I mean, people should donate to our campaign, get involved. If you're in another city, just send us a message saying, I'm in so-and-so city. Can you tell me how to get involved in your campaign? We have a lot of work to do. As I said, this is a national campaign. If you're in Seattle on the ground, or if you can visit Seattle and help us do door knocking shifts, that's, of course, it's very crucial, because there's no substitute for a field campaign. no substitute for having face-to-face conversations with potential voters. But no matter where you live, there is some shape or form you can contribute this campaign, and we need your contribution to this campaign. And I would really urge people, if you haven't joined Worker Strike Back already, you should join Worker Strike Back. And if you are already joined RBN, you should also join Worker Strike Back, because we have so much in common. We are working together towards the common goals. And I think, just in terms of ending this, Nick, I wanted to reiterate the point that you made, which is a very, very important point, and it's a source of a lot of confusion for a lot of genuine people, which is this idea that somehow leaderless resistance can work, or that you don't need any political ideas, political strategy, just people rising up
Just
can work.
vibes. Just vibes.
Yes. Yeah, just vibes. That is mythology, and it's actually dangerous mythology, and it is mythology, it is fiction that is put forward by the ruling class, because that's their way of doing a little bit of give some space for all the anger, but without letting it channeled into actual resistance that can win. That's why this idea of spontaneous victories are put forward, but in actuality, in history, it is not supported. Historically, it has always been,
Well said.
we don't need divas, we don't need people who are worshipped for their own sake, and then they enrich themselves and they do things for themselves at the expense of the working class. But what we do need is leadership of the correct political ideas, and there will be certain individuals who embody those ideas. And so in that sense, we do need leadership by those individuals, because we need the leadership of the correct ideas. And that also connects, that confusion also connects with the other point you made, which is, people are told, again, this is a talking point from the ruling class, that if you're genuine revolutionary, if you're truly radical, then you should not believe in any election. But actually, that's a nefarious point, because in reality, by not actually running socialist, independent, revolutionary election campaigns, you actually leave the field wide open, unchallenged, for the labor bureaucracy and for the Democratic and Republican parties to carry out the capitalist agenda and fail. And what you end up doing is failing to provide any avenue for struggle. I mean, just to give a concrete example, the
Yeah.
Bolsheviks in Russia, the Bolshevik party that won the Russian Revolution, they ran for office in Russia. They had people elected in the Russian parliament. The people who won, they used their offices to fight against the Tsarism and against capitalism and against the representatives of capitalism. That is exactly what I did in Seattle when I was on the city council for 10 years. None of this was a concession, whether from the Bolsheviks or from me. None of that was a concession to the capitalists. It was actually the exact opposite. When we ran for office every single time, and now as we are running for Congress, it scares the shit out of the capitalist class, because they know what this means. They know that a campaign like mine will provide a concrete avenue for people to get involved. They know that it is backed up by 10 years on the city council, where I never sold out and I was never marginalized. We won historic victories because we mobilized working people. One of the lobbyists of the corporate landlords, he said it correctly, because sometimes our enemies give us our best compliments. He said that it was Sawant's army that defeated the agenda of the corporate landlords. And what he was referring to is the fact that it is not just me as an individual, but the fact that I was willing to use my office to mobilize thousands of people to expose the Democratic Party's duplicity. That is what defeated the agenda of corporate landlords and of Amazon when we won the Amazon tax. That is revolutionary work. So let us not make the mistake of having this false dichotomy of, oh, well, if you're fighting for reforms, then you're not a revolutionary. You know what? Only revolutionaries succeed in winning substantial historic reforms. That is a revolutionary agenda, and only a revolutionary, while they are fighting for reforms, will talk about the need for revolution. That's the kind of revolutionary party you need.
Very, very well said. What a lot of people forget is that Chairman Amali, remember, who was targeted by the Biden administration. One of the reasons why they went after him, because remember, he ran a black socialist Marxist organization. They ran candidates all the time. Like, there's nothing in we're always confused. There's nothing in Marxism that says you can't run candidates. I don't know where people get this stuff from,
No, in
but
fact, it's the opposite. You have to
yeah,
use that. It's part of the arsenal. We don't
yeah,
think, yeah, we don't think it can just be about elections, but we also think it's a false dichotomy to pose it as election or not election. That's not the issue. The issue is what kind of fighting ideas you need. I mean, let me just say, it's if you said, okay, we won't run elections, but what happens in the labor movement? In the labor movement, you have a vast majority of the labor leadership that sells out the rank and file, not to mention the working class as a whole, because they are tied to the Democratic Party. And as Zoya said, the Black Panthers ran candidates because it is part of the revolutionary agenda to pose a very clear challenge to the leadership of the capitalist parties, and that means it has to go hand in hand with what we need urgently right now: a rank and file rebellion inside the labor movement against the leadership that is completely entrenched inside the agenda of the capitalist class. So all of this are these are arenas of class battle, of class war, and we have to fight on all these arenas, and we have to build up our arsenal.
yeah. This wasn't planned, but I'm glad we had a chance to cover this because we are clear. At least I'm clear that you won't have a revolution because of electoral politics. Electoral politics may not lead to a revolution. It's about giving people options. You have to give people in the working class options outside of the capitalist duopoly and give them organizations. And that's the extent at which we believe in using. That's why you see the Black Panther, Chairman Amali. It's not against uh, Marxist belief to run candidates. We don't believe in trying to run within the capitalist party system. Not like people like DSA. That's why DSA is inherently not socialist. You can't be a socialist while advocating for running within capitalist parties. This is the poll we did. We'll wrap up with this. Thought it was interesting. I definitely wanted to read this poll. I want to see where the RBN community was at on this. What does Zoran Mamdani's primary victory mean for the working class? 32%, not sure. That's fair enough. We got to analyze the situation. I understand that. 30% says absolutely nothing. 23% said, well, I said in the beginning, it's a propaganda win. 13% said he will change lives. So I think that was interesting. Kshama, any final thoughts? Any last things you want to promote? Any final thoughts as we wrap up the stream? I think any final thoughts on the New York mayor race, anything like that?
Yeah, first on the New York mayoral race, I forgot to mention that Mamdani has won the Democratic primary. There's still going to be a general election, and we know that Eric Adams is already on the ballot. And we have also heard Andrew Cuomo saying that he is going to run. If he doesn't make it to the Democratic primary, he's going to run independent. And so the battle is not over yet. And there are some lessons from New York State itself. I don't know how many people remember, but some years ago, another DSA candidate called India Walton, she ran for the mayoral election in Buffalo, New York, and she ran against an incumbent, Byron Brown, I think his name was, and she defeated him in the Democratic primary, handily defeated him. But then he ran as a write-in candidate in the general election, and he won. He trounced her. And so I think it poses I mean, just to say, I think that Mamdani's campaign my sense is that they're far more astute, and that they also have a far stronger field campaign and overall a better strategy. But I think above all this is politics. Above every field strategy and social media strategy is politics. And ultimately the main question here will be, as the election progresses from the end of the primary to the general election, the pressures on Mamdani and his campaign are going to go exponentially higher. Pressures from Wall Street, from the corporate landlords, from the Democratic Party themselves, who will welcome him with open arms and say, hey, but you need to compromise on this, or you need to compromise on that. So all of those pressures are going to expand by orders of magnitude just in the campaign. And so I think we have a lot to see yet in the remainder of the election. And then if he does win the general election, then of course that's going to be exponentially higher, the pressures. I mean, if you become the mayor of New York, This is Rockefeller's New York. This is New York full of the most obscenely rich billionaires, and you're going to go up against all of them. So all of that is going to be, we are going to see that play out. But bottom line, last night showed that working people's anti-genocide, anti-war agenda to make affordable housing, make housing affordable, to have a rent freeze in New York City, to have a working class agenda, including like we are calling for free healthcare. All of this was resoundingly confirmed. That is why, just in closing, I would urge everybody who's excited about that, you should join our campaign. Go to kshamasawant.org and donate, and also join Worker Strike Back and get involved with us.
Very well said. We'll end it there. Like I said before, this victory in New York is a great it's a propaganda win that we should take advantage of. We shouldn't miss this opportunity to dig into Zionism. But I'm not excited. I think people should let politicians surprise them for once. You know what I mean? People are like, Nick, why are you not excited about Zoran? Why the fuck should I? You should let politicians surprise you. Stop being disappointed. If this motherfucker surprised us, then good. But I'm not going to be excited for some guy who takes super PAC money. I'm not excited for someone who runs as a Democrat. Let politicians surprise you. Let them pleasantly surprise you. Stop being disappointed. That's where I'm at. But let's end it there. Kshama, thank you. Make sure you guys check out Worker Strike Back. We can go all day. I actually went a little bit longer than I planned, but we easily can continue this conversation. Thank you, Kshama. I'm definitely down to support you guys in September. Make sure you guys form your own. This is something else I wanted to say earlier. Make sure you form your own organizations, guys. Like, I either form your organization or join one. This is not a gatekeeper comment. It is true. If you're a socialist without an organization, you're not really a socialist. You're just a fan of the ideology. We formed RBN. We formed RBN Mutual Aid. And it's through RBN Mutual Aid we have a partnership with Worker Strike Back. And we have partnership with Black Agenda for Peace. But how we form these alliances with people who also have the organizations. That's what everyone need to be doing. We need to be building our socialist parties all over the nation, merging together and come with a plan for revolution.